9/11 and the revolt of Islam. The Islamist Al-Qaeda's attacks of 9/11-2001 focused on the tallest buildings and symbols of the West's superiority, and actually had nothing to do with a war against the West. It was part of the internal battle for Islam, meant to manipulate a military reaction from America, then use that reaction to invigorate the masses to revolt against their secular governments.
With vigilance, determination, courage, we will defeat the enemies of freedom.
The United States fell into the trap, invading Afghanistan and then Iraq.
For America, 9/11 was more than a tragedy. It changed the way we look at the world.
Even more important, Al-Qaeda hoped the 9/11 attacks would convince America to re-examine and change its Middle East policies.
The status quo in the Middle East before September the 11th was dangerous and unacceptable. So we're pursuing a new strategy. America has committed its influence in the world to advancing freedom.
لن يتحقق الإصلاح إلا بخلع هذه الأنظمة الفاسدة المفسدة وإقامة الحكومة المسلمة التي تحفظ الحقوق تصون الحرمات تضبط العدل.
We must seek stability through a free and just Middle East. And the government should continue to move forward with other reforms.
Due to the misunderstanding of 9/11, America played into the hands of the Islamists by advocating democratic reforms across the Middle East.
Citizens have voted in municipal elections in Saudi Arabia and in multi-party presidential elections in Yemen and Egypt.
Thus, the 9/11 attacks were successful only because America was unwittingly used, militarily and politically, to help further the Islamist agenda and Islam's revival across Dar al-Islam. In November 2004, Yasser Arafat died, and the United States insisted on Palestinian elections.
With our help, the people of the Middle East are now stepping forward to claim their freedom.
Predictably, in January 2005, the Islamist Hamas party won the vote and chose an Islamist prime minister. In fact, wherever free elections are held in Dar al-Islam, Muslims choose Islamist parties, which Muslims believe is the route to revival of their society. Farewell, Israel, Iran, and the danger to the West. Misunderstanding and war.
British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, a sincere man who abhors war, flies to Munich to meet Hitler. They are joined by French Premier Daladier and Benito Mussolini.
Chamberlain tells his people, "I believe it is peace in our time."
Yesterday afternoon, I had a long talk with Herr Hitler. It was a frank talk, but it was a friendly one. And I feel satisfied now that each of us fully understands what is in the mind of the other. Here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine.
The definition of war is the failure of diplomacy, which is the result of misunderstanding. Islam is undergoing a historic revival after 300 years of decline, returning to its historic formula for success, whereby Islam and religion govern the Ummah. On its road to revival, Islam must reacquire Palestine to redeem itself from westernization and the humiliation of a dhimmi state. Therefore, Western peace between Israel and Islam is unattainable. Peace can only be achieved in Islamic terms, peace with justice, which requires the eradication of political independence of Jews and return of the Jews to dhimmi status and the domination of the Ummah over them.
همه ملت‌ها یک فریاد می‌زنند، فریاد می‌زنند مرگ بر اسرائیل.
آمدن بگویند تا اسرائیل از صحنه روزگار حذف نشود، این فریادها به قوت خود باقی.
Israel's world support. Israel believed that retreating from territory under the Camp David and Oslo Accords would gain it world support. This despite Israel's prior 50-year history of world support, which had seen most Western countries collude in some way in the Holocaust, an arms embargo on Israel during Israel's War of Independence, the arming of Muslim countries, the lack of intervention in 1967 when destruction was imminent, the obstruction of the U.S. arms resupply in 1973, the UN Zionism is Racism resolution, and eager assistance to Iraq and Iran and others in obtaining weapons of mass destruction.
اما بدونید به لطف خدا دیگه تمومن. خیلی خرابتر از این حرفاست. بنیانهاشون الان داره تکون میخوره. کسی رو ندارن.
Machiavelli observed that states survive on respect, not love. While in world affairs, the smart, the strong, and the agile succeed, while the naive and weak fail. The Islamist strategic agenda.
به فضل الهی مسیر بهره‌مندی کامل از همه ظرفیت هسته‌ای رو به پایان است و ما نزدیکی‌های قله هستیم.
Iran, Syria, and other Muslim states have acquired strategic missiles and weapons of mass destruction, believing that gaining the upper hand in the balance of power with Israel will precipitate Israel's destruction and Islam's revival. Iran believes Israel cannot absorb a major blow in its heart, the greater Tel Aviv area, and survive the civilian casualties and destruction of infrastructure.
גרעינית האיראנית היא סכנה קיומית למדינת ישראל?
אני לא מאמין שהם ילכו נגד ישראל.
נשיא איראן אומר תמיד שהוא רוצה למחוק את מדינת ישראל מהמפה.
The mere capability of Iranian missiles to lay waste to Tel Aviv would create a strategic umbrella, preventing Israel from using its superior strategic assets in a conventional war. With Israeli missiles neutralized, in any war, Muslim countries would overwhelm Israel with their superior numbers, conventional armor, and short-range missiles. If Israel does use its non-conventional missiles, Israel would receive a fatal missile attack, while Dar al-Islam would only suffer collateral damage. Either way, Islam would reclaim Palestine for the Ummah.
ولا يضيرنا قتل الشهداء، لا يضركم إلا أذى، وشهداؤنا في الجنة، هذا هو عزاؤنا، وقتلاهم في النار كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يوم أحد.